it seems like people think like, oh, they might be apprehensive in this uncertain time or, whatever. And like, are you seeing that? Like when you're having conversations with buyers, do they seem more risk averse or do they seem more hesitant, or is that kind of a false narrative?
I think if we do our job, like really, really taking a minute to think about the valuation, maybe the way to look at it would be like my recent launches, for instance. I think it really is largely just dependent on the business, how the buyers react. Like I just had a launch yesterday, and it's really nuts. I didn't know how our buyer pool would react to it. It's a unique one, and we got a really great response. But I had one a few weeks ago, and I'm kind of baffled by the sort of a little bit of lack of response on it. At least people taking the next step once they kind of go through the materials, because it's a great business. There's nothing that buyers are doing that isn't more of a reaction to the particular listing or launch that I can see.
Okay. In an average valuation call, is there like, one or two questions that sellers always ask, or maybe it's something else like they're kind of surprised that that contributes to their valuation. They're like, "Oh, I didn't realize that mattered."
Well, timing is one, depending on their situation. I would say sellers wanting to understand the market, where it just seems like sellers really want to understand or get my opinion of what the market's doing, like the online M&A market. Maybe they Googled M&A online market and get some stats or read, some articles or whatever. Because I don't think they would ask that question. And I didn't really used to get asked that question a lot on calls, on valuation calls, but I get it much more often now. So there's got to be a reason that they're asking. So I think it's probably something they're reading. Maybe it's something in their own business that they've been affected, like their business has been affected. So maybe they take a more general viewpoint on, does that affect valuation? And if so, is that affecting the market? So I just keep blinders on and I focus on quiet light. The best I can offer a seller in that scenario when they want to know about the market is just to talk about like quiet light's market. It's very effective because it's valuable information, because I know that I can look the seller in the eye and give them stats and comparables and because I mean I go through like, when an advisor closes a deal, we have to fill out like a 40 or 45-ish question closed sales report. And I let the sellers know that we all do that, all the advisors at Quiet Light. So that's a lot of data. If we close 100, 125 deals a year, and we've been doing that, collecting that information for, whatever, 5 years, let's say, that data is priceless, really. And like, so I can feel really confident when I tell them like it's wide open, and all the advisors talk a lot. We're always on Slack, asking questions, brainstorming, all that stuff. Enough, in my opinion, to provide really good comps. It's enough data to go, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, read that the online M&A market's down 35% from, whatever, 2023 or whatever it is. And I can go in and say, well, we weren't at Quiet Light. So that the information they're reading could be accurate, but like, as far as I'm concerned, all we can go on is our little environment. And so I think sellers like to hear that because they know they're getting what I think is like really precise, probably mostly like 98 or 99% accurate information. Can give them stats based on data that I know we've curated and aggregated and put together. So everybody's open about, their deals, and so we kind of know what's going on. So I think that's really valuable for sellers.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
like you might be assigned to one advisor, but you're sort of actually behind the scenes being assigned to the whole team.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And all our information, and yeah, so I love that about Quiet Light, just having access, and everybody's open about their deals, and so we kind of know what's going on. So I think that's really valuable for sellers.
Yeah. One thing that came out of our customer research was that the word valuation didn't actually necessarily mean what we say when we say valuation. So, like when we say to someone, come get a business valuation, because it's more of like an analysis consultation. I mean, obviously, maybe you'll get a number at the end of it as well. But like, can you walk through, like, if someone said, why should I get a business valuation? Or like, what even is that? Like, what are they actually getting? They send through the cell form and then what happens?
Technically speaking, I guess valuation is trying to determine the asking price for a business. I mean, at the end of the day, that's really what it is. But I think a valuation call, so it's a lot of listening and understanding what it is the seller is, it's understanding what their goal of the call is. It doesn't have to be I want to figure out what the multiple is and what a potential asking price is. Sometimes it's just exploratory. Sometimes it's wanting to know if they should wait on selling or should do it now. Like I just got off a call earlier today, two sellers in Israel. They had an Amazon business, and I think what they wanted to convey to me was they wanted to be open with me about what's gone down with their business in the past year. Like unfortunately, all the tough things that have happened to them, and things that were completely honestly outside of their control. Just it was a perfect storm of tough things that happen. So sometimes I think they want to talk to you about that and then get your take on it, get my perspective on it. And then also, usually kind of in a situation like that to see if they have any hope of salvaging some type of purchase price, which would be more of a distressed kind of situation. A valuation call is definitely like exploration, conversation. It's sometimes I don't even talk that much about like, getting into the nitty gritty of like, revenue and SKUs or, any kind of drill down that you get into. Sometimes the conversation really, a lot of valuation calls for me, I don't even get to a purchase price. It's more like talking through things and I kind of digest all that and give some ideas back to the seller. Then it's like, let's run your P&Ls and then, try to figure out a multiple based on all the information you've given me. In my head, I'll start at a certain multiple probably in that conversation, just, as I'm thinking. And then when I kind of digest everything we talked about and thinks more through it, like, over the course of a day or something, that maybe probably moves the multiple up or down a little bit. So it's, I know that's like a subjective sort of method, but that's kind of how I do it. And then, then you just present it to them.
Any example of a deal where like something like without you, it would not have crossed the finish line? This deal would have been hard to accomplish without an advisor, broker, whether quiet light or not.
At the very beginning, when I talked to this seller, she got on the call sort of thinking, I know this isn't probably worth anything, but I at least wanted to talk to you. When I hear that, I try not to make assumptions, but it's kind of like, okay, well, let's hear it. What do you got going on? And there's a chance it maybe isn't worth much or something like that. But that's why you have these calls. So, we get into the call and like, she's got this really proprietary educational product that she's been offering for like years. Like I think like I can't remember, but maybe 8 or 9 years or something. And so I'm learning about it. I'm like, well, this is really cool. And it's very. She has a specific educational background that allows her to write about this stuff. And then so I'm kind of thinking about that and just thinking ahead, like how does that transfer? That's going to be something we need to talk about because so much of it is literally her and her intelligence and experience. But we get talking more, and they're getting comfortable, and so then we kind of start talking about the numbers, and they tell me like they're making, I forget the revenue, but they were netting like $450,000 doing this, and so I kind of said, I was like, so you're wondering if your company has any value, literally, like at all? And she was like, yeah, I don't know how we would sell this, even if it had value. And so that was a situation that doesn't happen that often, but it was like, is it trending well? Like, is there anything massively wrong? Is there a reason why we're having this call? Like, you're nervous about something. And it was, no, it's great. The trends were really solid. And I was like, do you have tax returns? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, do they look like your P&Ls? I'm expecting not really. And they say, yeah, actually we do. And we're very conservative on our tax returns. They look exactly like our P&Ls. So I was like, okay, SBA pre-qualified, probably growing trends. It's a digital product, real niche. I was like, I think we could, off the cuff, I was like, I think we could get you, a 3.5 multiple. So that would be, I think it sold for 1.7 million, I think at the end of the day. So that was a fun call because it's going in, you have a seller that thinks potentially it's not worth much, or they just had no idea, leave the call with an asset that's worth 1.7 million, 1.6 million, 1.7 million. So I mean, sort of answers your question from the standpoint of what can we bring as advisors to the table.